back to Barnstable This Morning, just about 20 minutes toward the top of the hour. On this Wednesday morning, I'm Sarah Colvin, and joining me live on the phone, I welcome our Director of Finance, Mark Milne. Mark, good morning.
Good morning, Sarah.
How are you today?
I'm pretty well.
All set for Thanksgiving?
Not quite, but we'll be there tonight.
That's good.
We're getting set now.
Indeed. So I want to talk a little bit, Mark, about 9C budget cuts. Can you tell us what that is and how it could potentially impact, or it is impacting Barnstable?
Sure. Yeah. During the fiscal, the state is mandated by their constitution to maintain a balanced budget. And so during the fiscal year, if at any point in time that they project their revenue shortfalls, then they have to make spending adjustments in order to get the budget back in balance. And the governor has what's called 9C powers, where he can, if revenue projections are revised downward, he has powers to make certain cuts to the state budget under 9C, and that's what's happening right now. There has been an updated revenue projection by the administration, close to $330 million reduction in revenues are projected, and there's several factors that are resulting in that projected reduction in revenues. And so the governor has issued some 9C cuts to bring the state budget back into balance.
Right, and $330 million is certainly a significant amount of cash. Do we know now, Mark, where those cuts are going to be made, and if any of those cuts are going to affect anything we've got going on here in town?
Yes, a significant majority of the cuts will be made to state agencies, and so many of those cuts to those state agencies won't directly impact the town of Barnstable. There has been limited proposed cuts to local aid, about $25 million, but under 9C, the governor doesn't have the unilateral authority to make cuts to local aid. He needs the legislature's approval to do that. The legislature has indicated that they will not support that portion of his recommended budget cuts. And so I'm pretty confident that we won't see any cuts to local aid. The governor has taken Chapter 70 off the table, meaning that we will not see any reductions to education funding. But in the local aid, if the legislature were to approve his recommendation, it would be about a $50,000 reduction to our local aid reimbursement for fiscal year 15. But again, I don't think that's going to happen.
Indeed. And of course, Mark, I would assume that this is something that kind of has to take place every year. I mean, obviously not every year there's going to be a revenue deficit, but, something that, you have to take a look at every year. Is it something that here in Barnstable we can plan for? I mean, I know that the local aid is something that we wait until the last minute to say, okay, this is what we're going to get. But are there any provisions put in our budget to kind of deal with it should there be a loss in that local aid?
Well, we do. We do take a somewhat conservative approach to our revenue estimates as far as non-local aid accounts, so that if we do have a shortfall in local aid, we're able to cover that with excess revenues earned in other areas, and that's generally the way we've dealt with these situations in the past. Is we haven't had to go back and adjust our budgets and make cuts to our budgets as a result of cuts to local aid. We've been able to cover that revenue shortfall with excess revenues earned in other areas. So that's been our practice in anticipation of events like this, is to take a somewhat conservative approach in some of the other areas of the budget, because this is unpredictable. If the state does come across a situation like this, we have to have some kind of contingency plan in place, and that's our contingency plan.
Indeed. Obviously, Mark, the state's budget is much larger than we have here in Barnstable, and many more moving parts than we have here. But is this something that might happen in the town of Barnstable on a smaller scale? Would there ever be a situation in which our revenue does fall short of what we predicted, and then budget cuts need to be made after the budget has been set?
Yes, we have had that situation in the past. Back when, with the 2008, 2009, during the recession, in that period, we saw significant drops in a lot of our revenue categories across the board as a result of people just stopped spending money. And the biggest account that we saw impacted was our local motor vehicle excise tax collections, and that was an account that was up to $6.5 million at one point, and it dropped all the way down below the $5 million level within a 2-year time frame. And at that point in time, we had to implement reductions, and basically our reductions to offset the declining revenues in those areas really resulted in us not filling vacant positions. So we were able to return appropriations to cover those revenue reductions by implementing a strategy of just not hiring people, and subsequently a lot of those positions in the following fiscal year were just not filled. So we were able to do it less painfully than having to lay off a bunch of people midway through the year. So that's been, we were fortunate that we had that opportunity to deal with that situation in that fashion. But yeah, we do experience it here at the local level sometimes. Obviously not to the same dollar level that the state budget would, but the impact can be just as severe to us on a percentage basis.
Absolutely, and then we're looking obviously right here at the town. Now I'm thinking about the excise tax, and I know that you and I have talked about how that's up again. So we really, I think that this year and in the times that we're in now, we really don't have to worry about those cuts here in Barnstable.
Yeah, I mean our revenues so far this fiscal year, our revenues are tracking as expected, as we projected in our budget, and we do not see any cause for concern at this point. We're almost 5 months through the fiscal year, and things seem to be tracking well. This state issue is the only negative issue so far that we've realized on at the local level. But again, I don't think this is going to have a significant impact on us. Some of the other revenue reductions that we could see as a result of the state's budget issue here is a reduction to circuit breaker funding, which is outside the local aid category. But we received a letter from the Department of Education stating that they feel confident they will be able to honor all projected reimbursements to cities and towns within the existing budget that they have. With the budget reduction that they received, it will not impact those reimbursement levels, which is good news. They're going to be making reductions within the department in other areas so that circuit breaker reimbursements are not impacted. So
how do the anticipated 9C cuts this year compare to previous years, Mark?
I think this is one of the larger ones. As far as the state budget revenue projection goes, I think this is one of the larger ones we've seen. They're, $330 million, I think, is what they're projecting for a shortfall. It's not the largest, but it is pretty significant on a $36 billion budget. I mean, it only represents about 1%.
Right. Kind of amazing. But think about that. $330 million is just 1%.
Yeah, I mean, we're talking big numbers here with lots of zeros, but still, $330 million is a significant amount of money. But ironically, one of the things that's impacting the state budget is that they've seen their revenue. The economy is recovering, and they've seen revenues grow as a result of that, which has triggered an automatic reduction in the personal income tax rate in January. And so that's resulting in almost $70 million of their projected shortfall in revenues in the income tax area.
Interesting.
Yeah, and so it's almost like a recovering economy results in less revenue.
Good
but
for the
they're seeing
residents,
revenues
though, right?
grow in
Good
other
for
areas.
us.
Yeah.
Interesting. That's very interesting. I guess good news for the residents, though. Well, Mark, I thank you so much, as always, for talking with us about these interesting issues, and have a wonderful Thanksgiving. We will talk with you again after the holiday.
Thank you. You too, Sarah. Enjoy your Thanksgiving.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Mark Milne is our Director of Finance. Always does such a great job explaining